Welcome to the Go to Work podcast. I'm Michael LaBrue, CEO and co-founder.
How y'all doing? I'm Jake Guerrero. I am the Chief Sales Officer.
So why did we create this podcast? So Go to Work is a construction skilled trades hiring platform. And we know in these two industries, it's been, how can we put this, Jake? I guess it's just really hasn't been at the forefront.
It's been forgotten about.
Yeah, really. So really we want to speak about jobs, interviews. We'll be speaking with different industry leaders as well to help you find your next career move. And for companies, really, it's more about what can you do on your end to find the best talent out there. Mm-hmm. So I guess we can go into what Go to Work is. So Go to Work, like we were saying before, is a construction and skilled trades hiring platform. So we're accessible through our app or website, where users can download the app on if you have an iPhone or if you have Android as well. You can download it through there. And then from there, you're able to search for jobs within these industries. You can chat with employers once they shortlist you. You're able to interview through Zoom. So we make it very easy, and we make it at the forefront where it's, you can, if you don't have a resume, you can use the project portfolio, where you can add different projects that you worked on. We have a resume upload as well. We just make it very easy, honestly, for the job seeker. And then for the company side, you're able to search. You're able to, like I said, interview as well, chat with candidates. We use matching algorithms as well to make it very easy, see what's good for you. And there's more to come. What's exciting is this is kind of like the beginning of it,
Totally.
Our development team, which we have a team of rock stars, honestly. They're going to be adding background checks in the future, drug testing. So we really want this to be an all-encompassing platform where you get the training that you need, that we want to do training. And it's from start to finish finding your new job.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And really the highlight is with Indeed, with Monsters, not to mention the competition, but who's really dedicating their platform to who we cater to. And it sounds like, for what we discovered, is no one really is, right? And so that's where we really came about. This guy is our CEO, as warranted as it should be. But the ideas behind of which is to come about of, hey, how do we really harness what's missing from different industries or whatnot? And some of that is, of what we're talking about, is the construction and skilled trades.
Yeah.
So they're the long forgotten about, and therefore we're creating that platform just for them. And inside of that platform, which you're going to find out later as we continue this podcast, or as this interview, is what makes it so different than these other hiring platforms. And so that's what we're going to get into. But the main part is the construction skilled trades have been forgotten about. And so we want to highlight the growing industry, and then how our platform can highlight them specifically and only them.
Yeah. This platform was made in mind to ensure that both the job seeker and company, are able to find the perfect fit. I think really, man, whenever you're finding a job, it's such a hassle. Like, it's a job in itself.
In general, for sure.
It's a job in itself to find a job. So, man, I'm excited. We'll be getting within, first season, we'll be having different hiring managers on here, industry professionals.
Yep.
We also want, the job seekers to come up here and see how they found jobs on Go to Work, and what we could do on our end to make it better.
Exactly.
So really, the first topic for this episode is how to find a job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very broad, right? It's hard to find a job, especially in, I guess, this economy. The way that there's so many different platforms on there. You're not getting any feedback.
Exactly.
You put in 100 different job, job placements in there, and you're not hearing back from anybody, right?
It's true.
So what would you say, Jake? What are some tips that you have to ensure that you're putting your best foot forward out there?
That's a great question. I think specific to what we are offering is, again, so we've had a long forgotten about construction skilled trades. So then how do we highlight that? And so amongst or within our website and our app is we have a few services or some perks that we offer that kind of highlight you beyond a resume. So one, we encourage you to have a resume. So within construction and skilled trades, there's not a lot of resumes, right?
Yeah. I mean, from what we've seen in all of the users that we have currently, a lot of them just don't.
Right.
They just
they,
don't.
They have the skill.
They have the skill.
They don't have the
correct.
resume.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's get that resume done.
Yeah.
Right? What's beyond that? Well, we have some things within our site that allow you to display and showcase yourself. Meaning, so we have a 30-second video that you can post. Hey, what would you like to say within 30 seconds to present yourself? That's great. Now, beyond that is something that we have is the project portfolio.
Yeah.
Now, that has some great things where you can go into the history of what you've done, but showcase it with pictures and videos. And so that's really going to highlight you to say, hey, look, if I'm caught between 3 electricians, right, these are all 3 great. Why am I going with this one versus those 2?
Yeah.
And so that project portfolio allows you to stand out and showcase your skills beyond that. So is it neatness? Is it coordination? Like whatever it is that some job that an organization may find better than the other 2, right? And so that's kind of the highlight of, hey, listen, this is a forgotten about industry. Not only that, how do you highlight that? And so one of them is with that 30-second video that we offer, but also that project portfolio to showcase your skills. But if you want to talk about more about that too, do you think that's good?
So those are all great points too. And I think even if you don't have a resume, there's so many different things out there that you could use to create a resume, right? I think within our platform, right, you can add the different jobs that you worked at. So you can add those things on there. But there's a lot of different resume creators that you can do absolutely free. Use Chat GPT and just put in, hey, these are the dates that I've worked with this company. These are the different objectives that I've had within this certain position. So there's just so much out there, and I think really on how you need to find a job to get back on that aspect, right, is using your resources that you have, like using your network. I always say your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth.
Correct.
I said that wrong.
Right. No, but I get it. But we all got it. We all got it.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
So on that aspect, right, who are you creating relationships with, right? So in your past job, your supervisor went to another company. Have you stayed in, contact with him? Have you spoken to him or her? Have you, asked about other opportunities in the area? LinkedIn is a great place to find your next job and connecting with people. And I think one of the things that people do on LinkedIn is they'll connect with somebody and then not even message them. I think one of the things is, how do you make yourself stand out, right? You go on LinkedIn, you message somebody and you say, hey, thank you so much for the ad. I love your organization. Find something within the news or something about, what their organization has done within the last couple of months, to say, hey, I saw that you guys did this, congrats on that part, right? Those little things are going to make you stand out as a candidate, right, on finding that job.
And honestly, I think that's a great point. So what kind of tying back into why we started this company was, what we found out was a lot of how you get hired is who you know.
Yeah.
So what you're speaking about is exactly that, right? Hey, I know somebody. He's awesome at what he does.
Yeah.
Go speak to him.
Yeah.
So how do we kind of, centralize that? And that's where our platform comes in, to where we can add features such as referrals or project portfolio or your 30-second video. So you're allowing yourself to display your worth in many different factors. So the video, the portfolio, and then honestly, the other part is the word of mouth. So how do we integrate that into our platform? And then, so those are some of the features that we're adding, to where saying, hey, there's a button you can click on for references, if you will, things like that. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is centralize how they communicate. It's word of mouth. I know somebody, things like that.
Or using different platforms too.
Multiple platforms. I know some.
Craigslist, all of that,
Exactly.
I think what we found too is that Craigslist has been a really big platform for trying to find jobs.
Absolutely.
But with Craigslist, right, you put in that job or you apply for it and you never hear back from somebody.
Yeah.
I think hearing back from people, I think just crickets is one of the worst things, right? And, there are jobs out there, but how do you put yourself in a position that you're more attractable than the guy right next to you?
I love that.
Yeah.
One thing that we talk about a lot is, hey, our biggest marketing or our biggest number of users being added daily come from Craigslist. And so what it tells us is that there's not a concentrated or a specific platform for them. And so that's where we come in.
Or even Facebook groups, right?
Facebook. So what? Great point. So Facebook, Craigslist, kind of the unorthodox type platforms, right? So you have your Indeed, your Monsters. The reason why we set out to go for go-to-work is construction and skilled trades. And so now we don't say Indeed and Monster, we say the Craigslist and Facebook.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is say, hey guys, come to us. We'll make it more professional. We'll make you more stand out. We'll have some perks. But that's the whole kind of notion of what we're trying to do. And it's really showing us that, hey, look, the majority of our users are coming from a Craigslist. And so that's why it kind of solidifies or gives us a better foundation of why we created this this platform.
Yeah. Okay, so I think to kind of sum it up on finding a job, right, is use your network properly, make sure that you're creating connections. I would say that's one of the biggest things. Making sure that you show your worth at your job.
Showcasing your skills.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Using the right platforms. Hopefully,
Exactly.
when we go to work, we're growing in that aspect, and hopefully, our goal is to be a centralized platform on there. Man, I think it's just. I think when you think about people trying to find a job, they just go in a sense of like, oh, I'm just going to apply to a job and I'm going to give the minimum effort and hope. But it's what can you do out there to make yourself stand out, right?
Yeah.
Is finding the hiring manager, calling the company, showing up to the company, I think more than anything.
Great point.
And hey, can I speak with HR? Hey, I wanted to, give you my resume right then and there.
Yeah.
We're hoping that within the platform, we're able to reduce some of those things, right? So that way it's a little bit faster. We know the turnaround within the construction and skilled industry is very quick.
Absolutely.
And the more time wasted, right, is not a good thing.
Yeah, if I may, all of those points you made is kind of general for anybody trying to get hired.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be construction and skilled
which
trades,
I love because that's why we set out to do what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of in general, and that's cumbersome on its own. So imagine platforms out there that have that are billions of dollars, but yet they still don't focus on the construction.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the whole point. Is all of what you said is for general. Now now imagine construction and skilled trades. It's even more cumbersome, more further red tape, or more just more hoops to have to jump through. And so that's why I love that what we're doing, because that in general is true. Now imagine the skilled trade and construction, and that's where we come in.
Yeah. So, man, it's like when I think about whenever I found jobs, right? I literally applied to the job. I didn't hear crickets for 2 weeks. Like I only heard crickets for 2 weeks. And what did I do? I kind of stepped out of my comfort zone. I went to go speak with the company, or at least with the person, printed out my resume, had a little cover letter on there. And that's it. At least, going that extra effort will really showcase what you're able to do. And even just working in the different aspects of going to, breakfast events, going to conferences, even if you're not working for a company or you're working for your own company and your company allows it, I think going to those conferences are actually one of the best things. Like I've met so many people at conferences, and I think all the conferences that me and you go to, right?
Exactly.
Like people don't think about, I guess they do think about this, but in the aspect of when you go to a conference and you go to the booths, right? Or you see somebody walking by and you look at their name tag and you're like, oh, I'd like that company, right? Just go talk to them.
Yeah.
It's going to be awkward, but everything, like at the beginning, it's always awkward, but you're just showing yourself that, hey, I'll have this conversation with you. And I think that kind of goes into the soft skills, right? Of communication, of like teamwork, of time management, like that little soft skill of just going up to people and
Yep.
just speaking to them is huge. And you do that best. You'll speak to anybody and everybody at any conference, right? But what do you do? How do you feel like whenever you go to a conference? Like what is your ultimate goal, or what do you do to make sure that you're able to speak to everybody and anybody?
Well, man, you made a couple of great points. I think some of those are beyond what we're doing now. We talk every day. We have certain milestones that we cater to and make sure we're hitting on the points. But some of that we can add to that is, hey, once you get a job, how do you keep it? And some of that ties into soft skills, right? So
keep it, and how do you make yourself go up in position too? I think
great
that's
point.
right.
So I love that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of two things, and that's where you can really see go2work's potential really expanding. Because right now our ultimate goal is, let's take that skilled person and that company that needs each other. Let's get them together. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now we want to go beyond that for a few reasons and a couple of different angles. Is okay, great. He's awesome at what he does, but he's maybe not quite, doesn't have the skills, the soft skills you spoke about to keep the job. And so that's where we want to kind of add on to what we do. Hey, once we get you a job, let's add on soft skills, right?
Yeah.
But going back to your question of just
what do you
shows
do?
and things like that,
Yeah.
It's just putting yourself out there, not being afraid, and just asking the questions that are on your mind without hesitation. And then when you start to do that, you start to see people open up on both sides. If that makes sense.
No, it does. I think on your aspect, right? Probably the person that you're speaking to feels some type of nervousness too. Like they're at this event, they haven't spoken to anybody, right? Like what are they doing here? But you just going up to them and just speaking to them, right? And it's just like, hey, I see that. What do you do at XYZ company, right? Or hey, I heard about your company, right? You're starting that conversation. You're already breaking the ice. You're already creating a relationship, right? And some of those soft skills too. Some of the things that I've always learned, right, is when you go up to a person, mention something that you like about them. Say,
Sure.
oh, I saw this shirt that I love your shirt, or hey, man, I saw your shoes, or Jake, we can't see his socks right now, but his socks are really cool. But I would mention something about his socks right now. But
My wife made fun of them, but I love you.
yeah, like little things like that is just to create a relationship from nothing.
Yeah. If I can, the main reason why go2work really established itself was to look at that little guy who's not a little guy. This industry is massive.
They're huge
it's
parts
massive.
of the success.
We're dealing with construction. We're dealing with skilled trades. That's
oil and gas, all of that.
That encompasses everything. Skilled trades, oil and gas.
Yeah.
And so, great. Let's get you hired, but let's get you beyond that. Let's get you staying at the company, and then, like you mentioned, getting promoted at the company. And so, to really harness what we're trying to do is get you hired on construction and skilled trades who's been forgotten about, but also provide soft skills to allow you to advance. Because within this industry, there may be somebody who's great at what they do, but not great at how they say this or that, or how they act, temperament, all these kind of soft skills that really factor in. And so as we continue to grow as a company, let's get down that factor of our foundation, connecting companies with skilled trades or construction. Now, how do we go beyond that? And that's what the soft skills you were speaking about. And so we want to go beyond that. We have a lot of future endeavors about that. But that's a great point you made, because once you're hired, what now?
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads into like getting hired, but beforehand, the soft skills on like interviews, right? Like the true interviews and that aspect of what you can say on your end, how to prepare for an interview.
Exactly.
What would you give some best practices for like interviews? Let's say you're using our app, or you're using on the website, and you have your Zoom interview. What would you say for like Zoom interviews? What would be considered some of the best practices?
I love the question. And there's generic answers, and then there's things that are generic that tie into what go2work does, and maybe you could touch on those points.
Okay.
But the 5 Ps, of production I've learned in college was, preparation prevents poor performance. So That's something I learned or was told at like a 20-something-year-old, right?
Yeah.
So how are some of those things that you can, how do you prior, prep, right?
Hmm.
And so it's understanding some of the questions that may come at you, but it's also being prepped on your resume,
Yeah.
right? Then you have beyond that resume, which I want you to kind of speak about,
Hmm.
which is what we offer,
Hmm.
but it's really prior preparation. Do you have the skills? Have you articulated that with to a point where somebody finds you attractive,
Yeah.
but on a resume?
Or learning about the company too.
100%. So,
Yeah.
do you know the company? Do you know the value? Like what value? So, what's the company? What do they do?
Yeah.
What value do you bring?
Hmm.
Right. And then once you harness some of those things, how do you go beyond that? And maybe you can speak about that on some of the project portfolio, if you will. But before that, add some of your own points because I know you've
Yeah.
done. I know you have a greater history of that.
Yeah. So I would say too is as much as the company is interviewing you, remember that you're interviewing the company
I
as
love
well.
that.
So having those like, hey, what is your company culture, right? Why is this position available? What
Is there
happened
room for
for, yeah,
progression?
progression? What happened to the individual that left? Was it something within the
Yep.
organization? Did they find a new opportunity? Sometimes companies won't tell you that, right?
Understood.
But somebody that's really interested in about the company dynamic, I would say, would really, on my end, like at least as a hiring manager, it would really exemplify like, hey, this guy's interested. Like
Hmm.
he's not just trying to find a job. He can really find he could be a really true good fit for us in the future and keep on growing, within the organization. So the prior, knowing about the company, knowing your resume like the back of your hand, emphasizing on certain attributes within your resume that are going to make you stand out. So
Yeah.
if like you're an electrician, using the project portfolio and say, hey, I know you shortlisted me. I've had some projects on there. Did you take a chance to look at them? If you haven't, we can go over them and I can give you examples of what I worked on and how this relates to the position that you're hiring for. So those little, I guess those nuances, right? Those little things that you really don't think about,
Sure.
will really make you stand out. But man, I'm trying to think of what else
But
I usually say.
but Mike, as an introduction, for this podcast and what we're trying to do,
Hmm.
I think this is a great intro,
Hmm.
right? Do you know yourself
Yes.
and do you know the company?
Hmm.
And those two things alone will help you advance yourself. So we'll get into more details, right, as we continue
Yeah,
these
maybe we
podcasts.
could do another episode
Well,
fully on
so
that.
I'm sure we
Yeah.
will, to where we're going over details. Hey, here's the details of which. But just to kind of kick things off, I think you're making great points that are kind of bird's eye view.
Yes.
Do you know yourself? How can you present that? And then do you know the company? Because to your point, you made a good point. How much of it, most people could say, well, I know myself, I'm ready, I'm ready.
Hmm.
But how much do you know the company?
Hmm.
Now, a lot of companies, and I hired 20, 30, 40, within 30 to 40 different individuals on the sales side.
Hmm.
One of the factors was, what do you know about us?
Hmm.
And then they say,
Did
well,
you
I
do
don't
your
know.
research?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I love what you're saying. How much do you know of yourself?
Yeah.
How much do you have to offer?
Uh-huh.
And how much do you know about them?
Hmm.
So I love your point as
We'll
a
keep
breaking
that
ice.
broad for right now. Then we'll get into the
Yeah, I
details of
love
what
that.
questions to
Correct.
ask.
It keeps them enticed of like, hey, great advice up front.
Hmm.
We'll get into the details later, but it's good advice up front because that alone will let somebody say to themselves, I hear this, hey, you know what? I'm always sure about myself, but not about the company.
Hmm.
So something to think about, and we'll add on to that as we continue.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what else we could really speak about on the interviews and the questions part. But I think let's speak about the difference between like an in-person interview, and then over the phone or as well through like Zoom. I think one of the aspects that you got to think about when you're doing like a Zoom interview, right, and you do it through our app, is your surroundings, right? Are you in a quiet place?
Okay.
Do you not hear your dogs barking, right?
Honestly, yeah, kids,
Are you even dressed up? You know, like are you
dress,
wearing like a
yeah,
collar shirt? You're not wearing your pajamas, right, to an interview
the
where you're gonna see it.
basics.
Make sure you're on video as well. A lot of
Yeah,
these, I've had interviews where people don't even show themselves on video.
agreed. I
Yeah,
mean, I've seen it, and I agree.
yeah, or even practicing before. practicing is such.
Hey, prior
Yeah.
preparation prevents poor performance. But it's true. I mean, it's true. Continue.
Yeah, no, like my coach used to tell me, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. So if you practice crappy, you're gonna play crappy,
I
right?
love it. I love
So
it.
I would always practice. Like I would ask myself what questions. Look at yourself in the mirror, right? As awkward as it may be, right?
True. Very
Or
true.
you're a good-looking person and you look at yourself all the time, so it's probably not a big difference anyway, right? So
But you're right.
so those aspects, right, is like, okay, I'm prepping myself. If I go into an in-person interview, make sure that you're there early,
Yep.
right? You're 15 minutes early. Like, they used to say, hey, if you're early, you're on time, and if you're
On time, you're late.
There you go. There you go.
Sorry.
Little things like that. You're dressed up for it as well. Obviously in the positions that we're hiring for, I don't think a lot of the hiring managers expect you in a suit and tie, right? But they want to see you respectable, right?
Sure.
They want to make sure that you're on time. Print out your resume that way in case they don't have it, or print out your project portfolio with all the different
Sure.
pictures that you have.
I think another thing to add. Well, we have others. Please.
No, you
please,
know what?
Please.
One thing that I just, since we're speaking about the project portfolio aspect, we have to have a way to download your project portfolio. I don't think we have that right now.
Something to think about.
Something to think about. Something to think about, right?
I love it. I love it.
Go ahead.
Well, I think the other thing is they have questions for you. Because of your research, what questions do you have for them? Some of the quick examples is there room for growth? Right? Maybe that's just a small example. I mean, one example, but it's a big one. It's, hey, once I get this position, thank you. That's why I'm going for this position. I want this position. Now, is there a map or a
progression chart?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Is there something that tells me that, hey, you'll start here, but here's where you can end up? Now, that's something I've always took to heart, because whenever I did interviews for my team back in the previous companies, it was that we did have that. And so maybe they didn't ask, but I made sure to tell them. So great, I could tell you, okay, great. Now, how do you know how to ask that on your own? So what if everything works out great for you? You're vibing on the manager, you're vibing on what you have to offer, but then there's no room for growth. Now that might stunt, or that might hesitate you from accepting that position. So the other thing is like, hey, what questions, for example, room to growth, do you have for them? So whenever a company asks you, what questions do you have for me? You want to be prepared for that for two reasons. One, they want to hear answers. And two, you want to be prepared to ask it yourself. This is your career. This is your journey.
It's your life.
Correct.
Honestly. It's your life.
It's your next decision to get this next career move.
Yeah, benefits, speaking about work culture, speaking about, hey, is it a remote job?
I love it.
All of those certain aspects is such a huge thing that people, like, you come in for an interview and they ask you all the questions, and they ask you that question, hey, do you have any questions for you? No, I'm good.
Right.
Yeah. Or even asking at the end of the review, how do you feel about me? Do you have any hesitation? Right. Some hiring managers are going to just tell you, no, all good, right? But the other aspect too is, okay, well, if there's no hesitation, when can I hear back? When should I be hearing back from you?
Great.
That follow-up. Because nobody does a follow-up, or even when you go home and you have their email, right? They set up the interview with you. Hey, thank you so much for your time.
Yep.
Really appreciate it. And then you put down one little point that they brought up that they really liked about you. Say, hey, I know within the interview we spoke about this, and this is what I can bring to the table. A lot of people don't do that.
Great point, Michael. Being on the sales side, we're co-founders.
We're follow-up.
We're co-founders and all that, but great point, because, man, that is excellent. How do you follow up? Right now, it may not be a sales position. It may be X, Y, Z, but it doesn't matter. It's about the follow-up, concern,
shows that you care.
Things like that. Great point on that. I think that's a solid answer, a solid point to make on that.
So what other search tips or job search tips do you think you have? I mean, we've kind of gone over interviews, how to make sure that you're presentable, what to ask, right? How to search for jobs, kind of on a very broad topic. But what other things have helped you out to find a job? Like what could you tell to everybody and say, hey, this has really helped me out?
That's a good question. I mean, we kind of hit on a few of the the main nails that go into the coffin, if you will. But another thing that's important is who you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be generic answer, but what I would say to that is, especially tying it to construction skilled trades.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these folks may be here for 30 years straight. Some may bounce around every year or two.
Or project based, whatever.
Yeah, no, I love that. Exactly. So it's project based. It's this duration. But when you left or stayed, how are you remembered? And that all ties from day one of your job. Once you start, how do people remember you? Whether you stay or leave, what's your legacy? Once you leave, do they say this, that, or the other,
Mm-hmm.
negative, or this, that, or the other, and positive? So reputation is very important, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're going to a new job or you're at the same job, what is your reputation like? What's your work ethic like?
Mm-hmm.
How do they remember you? At the end of the day, whether you leave the company or stay, what do they think about you? And that comes into your reputation, but that directly ties into your work ethic.
And that's not even just your supervisor or your director doing that. How do your colleagues view you, right?
Continue. I love that.
Because there's going to be like if you really are doing your job very well, and in the aspect of your colleagues think of you very highly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you move up to a position, what are you going to obtain? You're going to obtain that respect, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a huge part.
I love that, because as you continue to advance into your position, now you're dealing with other departments.
Mm-hmm.
So what may not have mattered at one point now matters.
Soft skills come into that.
The whole thing, I love it. Soft skills, promotion of which, how do people view you? What's your reputation? And therefore, when you are rightful, because a lot of times we could also talk about where you're promoted unrightfully,
mm-hmm.
right? Why did they get that? I'm better than this, I'm better than that. But then also when it's done rightfully, people respect it and they go, oh, they should be in that position.
It makes sense.
And so then you start dealing with these other departments.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can kind of start tying these departments into what your department does. But there's respect there. There's a level of productivity with
mm-hmm.
respect.
Yeah.
And those two combined together equals production.
Yeah. It's all those things, right, that really puts you in the limelight compared to other people, starting from the interview.
Yeah.
Starting from the interview until you get hired, you get onboarded, you start creating those relationships with people from the get-go. That's another thing that we haven't spoke about is when you get hired, right? How are you going to make yourself, I guess, not available? How do you portray yourself, right, to other people? Are you going up and saying, hi, my name is Michael Abreu?
It all ties.
It all ties in together. It just doesn't start when you get hired. It's creating your own culture as well.
I love that. Yeah, I love the way you put that.
You have to create your own culture.
Yeah, elaborate on that a little bit, but I love that.
Man, I would say, so creating your own culture, right? So when somebody comes up to me and they say, that's Michael. He's very respectable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He does this, he does that. Or, hey, that's Jake. I love the way that he speaks to people. So how are you creating your own culture? Because at the end of the day, you are your own company.
I want to highlight that.
Oh, I'm going to say that. You are the CEO of your own company.
Right here.
Right?
I love it.
So what are you doing on your end
exactly
to ensure that you as a CEO are portrayed in a perfect light or in a great light? Now, let's not say perfect because people will find a reason to hate no matter what. Right?
But even if they're not a CEO, which you've worked hard to get to, but you are the position you're in. Mm-hmm. Same factor, same notion. Mm-hmm. How are you portrayed? Mm-hmm. That's all upon you. It's about your character, how you are. All these things factor. But cool, we spoke about a few things. How do you get the job? Mm-hmm. And then once you're there, how do you create a culture? Mm-hmm. Which I don't know if a lot of within our industry thinks about how to create that culture. Mm-hmm. Whether you're at the top of the white hat or the yellow hat for our business, right? Mm-hmm. You should still be asking the same question.
Correct.
And then answering the same question.
And then that's where the thought process.
So real quick, to where you're right at the bottom, but over 5, 6, 7, how many years, now you're up top because of the things we spoke about, because of the soft skills, because of the interaction and how you portray yourself and the culture. Yeah. So continue, man. I love what you said.
We start speaking about that. You start asking the right questions, and then very soon what type of culture that company is.
Perfect.
Are they going to completely shut you off? I've worked at organizations where and this happened during COVID. I was working at a company, and I had a suggestion for the vice president of the company. I emailed him and I said, hey, we should think about doing this since we're all going to be working at home. Think about, this part of training. And I automatically got an email from my supervisor saying, hey, why are you emailing the vice president? From right then and there, I knew, hey, this company isn't for me.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
Now, so if I may ask, why would you say that? Because I think I agree, but what would you say to the viewers or audience?
It's really
as to why?
It's just the culture, the culture of where you're going to be at. Like whenever you start creating or you start asking these questions and you start going up, or you're asking your supervisor or the director or whoever it may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they automatically like deny you or say, oh yeah, whatever. Or like they don't give you the time of day.
Sure.
That's probably not a good fit for you.
Right? I agree.
And there's organizations out there that are like that, unfortunately.
Agreed.
Right?
I call it censorship.
And
they censor you a little bit to where you can't advance but continue.
And those are the questions that you need to be asking in the interview.
I love it. I agree.
Like all of that all ties together. And I think what we're all kind of entailing with all of these interview questions that we've been speaking about, all of the different aspects of, okay, how to find a job, it's all communication. It all comes down to communication.
Yep.
Communication is key. What are you doing on your end to ask the right questions and such? So I don't know. That was a good topics. Good topics for sure.
And I love the way you said that, because to kind of, if we're getting toward a conclusion, is all of these things we spoke about, no matter what, is from A to Z, even tying into our platform, is communication. And that's what we're doing. Yeah. We're trying to have a platform that levels job seekers and companies within this industry on that platform. What's that platform equal? Communication. So I love the way you put that, because that's a good way to kind of tie that into what we offer, and that's what we offer. What kind of communication? Well, from interviews to yourself to portfolios to all this good stuff. But it is about that. And so I love the way you kind of said that and how it ties into what we're trying to channel with our platform.
Yeah.
On the forgotten about industry that's actually one of the fastest growing in this nation.
Yeah. I agree. So I think we can wrap it up on that end, but to our users, we'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to comment, see what other type of questions you want us to answer on the company side as well. Whatever, even on the aspect of, hey, have you thought about adding this feature within our platform?
We'd love to hear feedback.
Yeah, we want to get feedback from you, and make sure that you follow us on social media. Go2work.com as well, and then download the app. It's free.
Android or Apple, we got you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys. Tune in for the next episode.
Awesome.